The American Special War Strategy commenced in May 1961, developed by two individuals, Eugene Staley, an economist from the Stanford Research Institute at Stanford University, and General Maxwell Taylor. The plan aimed to stabilize Vietnam within 18 months using the Republic of Vietnam's military, alongside American advisors, weapons, and support. However, the strategy failed because it was heavily reliant on the establishment of strategic hamlets. These hamlets were intended to emulate the successful model used in the Philippines for identifying and isolating communists. The US believed that if it worked in the Philippines, it would surely succeed in Vietnam. However, this proved to be the greatest miscalculation in the American special warfare strategy, as no Vietnamese wanted to leave their homeland and villages to move elsewhere. Instead, they were forced into these heavily fortified hamlets where movement was severely restricted. All social activities, such as weddings and funerals, had to occur within the community church. Moreover, anyone who failed to attend church was listed in a blacklist and could be targeted for elimination at any time. This American error was noted by their own history professor, Randy Roberts, who argued that the so-called strategic hamlet program was essentially about removing Vietnamese farmers from their ancestral villages and confining them within fenced-in lands, which resembled prisons more than genuine communities. As a result of the failure of the special warfare strategy, the US was forced to shift to a local warfare strategy. This new phase involved the direct deployment of their own troops and those of their allies to the battlefields of South Vietnam starting on March 8, 1965. The US began significant troop landings in Da Nang, and the number of troops escalated, reaching up to 1 million, including forces from US allies. Facing such a well-equipped force of 1 million soldiers posed a daunting challenge for Vietnam, which had only about 200,000 troops equipped with rudimentary weapons. Consequently, General Secretary Le Duan directed a strategy of prolonged conflict, recognizing that it was impossible for Vietnam to quickly defeat the numerically superior and better equipped US forces. Instead, the goal was to prolong the war and make it difficult and costly for the US to achieve a quick victory, leveraging the fact that the US economy favored short wars, typically 3 to 5 years at most. Thus, Vietnam needed to devise a long-term and resilient fighting strategy. This strategic directive was clear, but the tactical questions of how, where, and when to engage became a different set of challenges. Ultimately, Vietnam chose to attack Khe Sanh in 1968, a battle that the entire world watched with bated breath. There were two key questions at this juncture. The first was why Vietnam chose Khe Sanh over other locations. The answer lies in the strategic importance of Khe Sanh, which was at the heart of the McNamara Line, an electronic defensive barrier built by the US to block North Vietnamese reinforcements from the north to the south. Thus, by attacking Khe Sanh, Vietnam could potentially dismantle the McNamara Line, greatly facilitating the movement of reinforcements from the north to the south. The second question was why the attack was specifically planned for 1968 rather than earlier or later. If the attack had occurred earlier and Vietnam had succeeded, American generals could still have requested additional support since their 4-year plan could accommodate such adjustments. If it had been later, it would not have exerted the same political pressure, as 1968 was a US presidential election year. Attacking after the election would have lost its significance, so Vietnam was compelled to strike in 1968 to maximize political pressure on the United States. The specific timing of the offensive was chosen to ensure that it occurred when American forces were least prepared and to disrupt the US forces sufficiently to weaken key positions in urban areas, thus creating conditions favorable for a broader offensive. The question of how to effectively deceive the US forces, given the frequent deceptions between Vietnam and the US, led to a strategy of feigned inactivity at Khe Sanh, making it seem like a diversion, thereby drawing the most elite US forces to that location and creating vulnerabilities elsewhere. This tactic of feigning action where there was none confused the US and rendered their predictions ineffective. Vietnam meticulously prepared its forces for a significant assault on Khe Sanh in 1968, even deploying tanks for the first time in this battle against the US. However, they openly declared their intent to target crucial sites within the city, stating, "We will strike directly at your key locations in the city." The US had been deceived by such tactics from Vietnam too many times before, leading to a report to General Westmoreland by US intelligence suggesting that the Vietnamese forces were merely feigning at Khe Sanh to actually strike the city. However, Westmoreland dismissed this. Accustomed to being misled in such a way, he believed it was not possible that the Vietnamese could muster enough strength to attack the city. This American oversight played directly into the hands Vietnam had laid out in their strategy. The timing for the attack was precisely chosen to coincide with the Tet holiday in 1968, a period when no American general anticipated an attack. General Westmoreland estimated a 60% chance of an attack before Tet and a 40% chance after, but none during Tet, which he assumed Vietnam would use for troop mobilization. Similarly, Philip Davison, head of U.S. intelligence, saw no reason for a Tet attack, thinking it was a time for Vietnamese troop consolidation. This underestimation led to a weak response when the Vietnamese forces launched their offensive, resulting in a 6-hour occupation of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon, known as the Eastern White House, the nerve center of U.S. operations. The situation led the then U.S. president to exclaim, "The Viet Cong have been strolling in our embassy." Let us wait and watch what unfolds in the next episode. Thank you for your attention and interest.